The mysterious discovery. The stars shimmered like diamonds as the alien ship glided silently through the cold emptiness of space. A group of explorers from the Zorak Empire, a powerful race known for their technological superiority, were on a routine mission, searching for new planets to explore and resources to harvest. But they weren't expecting to find anything out of the ordinary, certainly not something that would change the course of their history forever. The leader of the group, Commander Thrix, stared out from the bridge of the ship. His pale blue skin reflected the glow of distant stars. His mind was sharp, and his instincts were even sharper. The mission had been quiet, uneventful. But then, a strange signal had appeared on their radar. It was faint, like a whisper from the past, almost like it had been waiting for them to discover it. "Commander," said Lyra, the ship's technician, her voice breaking the silence, "we're picking up an unusual transmission. It's coming from a distant system, far beyond the territories we've explored before. It's human." Frix's eyes narrowed. He had heard stories of humanity, the primitive race from a distant part of the galaxy, but he didn't expect to hear anything from them out here. Humanity had been lost to history, thought to have disappeared in a great war long ago. "Are you sure?" Frix asked, his voice calm but laced with a trace of curiosity. Lyra nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "The signal is weak, but it's definitely human. I'm tracing it now." The rest of the crew gathered around, their eyes wide with disbelief. What could this mean? Humans were believed to be extinct, wiped out by their own destructive wars. No one had heard from them in centuries. "Prepare for a jump," Frix ordered. "Set course to the signal's origin." The ship powered up, its engines humming with energy as it prepared for a long journey. The crew sat in tense silence as the stars around them stretched into lines, and the ship accelerated into hyperspace. Hours passed, and the deep silence of space surrounded them. When the ship finally exited hyperspace, the crew saw something they could barely believe. In front of them, floating in the dark emptiness of space, was a massive ancient structure, a colony. But it wasn't like any colony the Zorak had ever seen. The colony was vast, its broken and dilapidated walls covered in a strange alien-looking moss that had grown over the metal. It was clear that the colony had been abandoned for a long time. The ship's scanners detected no life signs, but the structure itself was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't built like the grand cities of the Zorak Empire, but it had a certain symmetry, a certain elegance that hinted at a lost civilization. "Is this a human colony?" Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. Frix didn't answer immediately. He was focused on the colony, analyzing the structure with a professional eye. The colony was much larger than expected, a labyrinth of towers and buildings that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was clear that this place had once been bustling with life, but now it stood empty, as if frozen in time. "We need to investigate," Thrix said. His voice held a mix of excitement and caution. "Lyra, can you locate the source of the signal?" Lyra worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. The scanners beeped, and a small blinking dot appeared on the screen. "It's coming from within the colony itself. We need to land and explore further." The ship descended slowly toward the surface of the colony. The alien city below looked as though it had once been alive, filled with people, technology, and a thriving culture. Now, it was a ghost town. The buildings had collapsed in places, and the streets were overgrown with vines and weeds. It was a strange and haunting sight. When the ship finally touched down on a flat area near what appeared to be the central hub of the colony, the crew began to gather their equipment. Their footsteps echoed through the empty, silent air as they stepped off the ship and onto the desolate ground. The atmosphere felt eerily still, as if the very air was holding its breath. Frix led the way, his eyes scanning every corner of the colony. The walls around them were covered in strange symbols, some of which seemed familiar, others completely alien. There was a strange energy in the air, a feeling that they were walking in the footsteps of something long gone, something important. "Let's stay sharp," Frick said, his voice low. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The crew moved cautiously through the abandoned streets, the dust crunching beneath their boots. They passed through large, open spaces that once may have been marketplaces or plazas, now empty and silent. Everything about the colony seemed frozen in time. It was clear that it had been abandoned quickly. But why? What had happened here? As they moved deeper into the heart of the colony, the signal grew stronger. It was coming from a large building that seemed to be some sort of control center or headquarters. The doors were slightly ajar, as if someone, or something, had left in a hurry. Frick signaled for the team to approach cautiously. When they stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy they couldn't explain. The room was dark, lit only by the dim glow of old flickering screens. On one of the screens, a series of images flashed. Broken images of humans, their faces filled with fear, their bodies dressed in strange uniforms. There were flashes of lights, explosions, and then silence. Frick's heart raced. This wasn't just an abandoned colony. There was something here, something that was never meant to be discovered. "Get the data," Frick ordered, his voice sharp. The mystery was just beginning, and the truth that awaited them would be far more than they could ever imagine. The first clue. The quiet hum of the Zorak ship was the only sound breaking the stillness as Thrix and his crew moved deeper into the abandoned colony. The air felt heavy, almost as if the very space they walked through was laden with memories. Memories of a civilization long gone. The walls of the control center flickered with life, their faded screens barely showing anything readable. Yet, one thing was clear. The colony had been abandoned in haste. There was no sign of struggle, no trace of violence, but something had forced the people to leave. "Commander," Lyra said, breaking the silence. She was standing in front of a large console, tapping at a few broken keys. "I'm starting to pull up some files. They're old, but I think I can salvage them." Frick stepped over, his sharp eyes scanning the console. "Do it." Lyra worked quickly, her fingers moving fast as she decoded the information. The files were fragmented, corrupted by time, but there was enough there to raise questions. "What's this?" Lyra muttered. The file she opened showed an image, faded and grainy, of humans standing together in what appeared to be a celebratory moment. They were gathered in a large hall, smiling, but the background was a blur. It looked almost like a photo taken before the end. "It doesn't match the state of this place," Frick said. "It seems too peaceful, too normal." Lyra nodded, her expression tense. "Yeah, something doesn't fit. If this place fell because of a disaster, why does this image look like they were celebrating a victory? Why is there no sign of destruction?" Frick stared at the image for a long moment, lost in thought. His gut told him that there was something more here, something hidden just beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful colony. "We need to keep going," he said finally. "The answers are here somewhere. We're not leaving until we find out what happened." The crew moved deeper into the building, carefully navigating through hallways lined with abandoned machinery. The colony had once been alive with activity, but now it was nothing but a tomb, echoing with the past. As they approached what seemed to be the colony's central chamber, a strange humming noise filled the air. It was soft at first, barely perceptible, but as they neared the chamber, it grew louder. Frick's instincts kicked in, and he motioned for the crew to halt. "What's that sound?" Lyra whispered. "I don't know," Frick replied, his voice low and cautious. "Stay alert." They pressed forward, entering a large, circular room. In the center, there was a massive piece of technology, an alien-looking device that hummed with energy. Its surface was covered in strange symbols, and its purpose was unclear, even to the most advanced minds in the Zorak Empire. The device was larger than any human technology they had encountered, and it seemed to pulse with an eerie light. "Is this some sort of weapon?" one of the crew members, Zor, asked, his voice shaky. Fricks stepped closer, his sharp gaze scanning the device. I don't think so, but it's definitely important. As he reached out to touch it, a low, mechanical whirring filled the room. Suddenly, a holographic map flickered to life in front of them. The map was vast, showing the galaxy in intricate detail. But what caught Thrix's attention was the bright red dot that appeared in the center of the map, right near the coordinates of the abandoned colony. This map, it's showing us a location, Thrix murmured. It's showing the center of human activity. But why was this place left behind? Lyra leaned closer, her eyes scanning the data. Commander, look at this. There's a series of encrypted messages here. It looks like someone was trying to send a distress signal. Thrix's heart raced. They were getting closer. The crew gathered around as Lyra decoded the signal, which flashed on the screen as a series of numbers and coordinates. It's a warning, Lyra said, her voice filled with tension. A warning about an approaching disaster. The message is broken, but it says, the war is coming. They'll stop at nothing. Escape while you still can. The message sent a chill through the crew. It was clear now. The colony hadn't fallen to a natural disaster or a malfunction. Something much worse had been at play here, and it was connected to the human race's last struggle for survival. Thrix clenched his fists. They were running from something much more powerful than us. They tried to warn others, but it was too late. The war they mentioned, it was happening right here. But why leave all of this behind? Lyra asked, her brow furrowing. Why didn't they try to defend themselves? Thrix paused. That's what we need to find out. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the colony, as if the very ground beneath them was shaking. The crew looked at one another, fear creeping into their minds. What was that? Zor asked, his voice tight. Thrix's eyes narrowed. We need to move. Now. They quickly made their way back to the ship, but the hum of the mysterious device continued to pulse in the background. The further they went, the more the rumblings intensified. Something was happening, something they hadn't expected. As they reached the ship, Lyra turned to Thrix, her eyes wide with concern. Commander, the map we saw. It's not just showing locations. It's showing paths, routes. Something's coming, and we might be in its way. Thrix's gaze was firm. We need to find out what happened here, and we need to do it fast. The truth is buried in this place, and we're going to dig it out. Whatever is coming, we're not going to be caught off guard. The crew boarded the ship, ready to uncover the secrets of the lost human colony. They had only scratched the surface, and the truth was darker and more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The shocking truth. The ship hummed with a quiet urgency as the crew reboarded, their hearts pounding from the eerie discoveries they had made. Commander Thrix stood at the helm, staring out at the abandoned colony, still filled with questions. The rumbling beneath the colony had intensified, and now they were more aware than ever that time was not on their side. Commander, Lyra said, breaking the silence as she sat down at her console, her fingers working rapidly. We're picking up more signals, not from the colony this time, but from something else, something nearby. Thrix's pulse quickened. The signals had been faint before, but now they were unmistakable. They were coming from something just outside the colony's orbit, close enough to feel the tension building in the air. Can you pinpoint the source? Thrix asked, his voice low. Lyra's brow furrowed as she concentrated. It's hard to say, but it's definitely not human. It's massive, like a fleet. Thrix's eyes narrowed, his thoughts racing. A fleet. Could it be the enemy the humans had been warning about? The ones they had been running from? Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Thrix commanded. If they're hostile, we need to be ready. Before Lyra could respond, the ship's sensors lit up in a flash, signaling a sudden and immediate threat. The holographic display in front of them blinked with multiple red dots, and the room filled with the sound of alarms blaring. A shadow loomed over the colony, a fleet of enormous ships, far too large to be anything of human design. "Commander," Zor's voice was tense. "These ships, they're not like anything we've ever seen. They're beyond anything we've encountered before." Frick stood frozen for a moment, the gravity of the situation sinking in. He had thought that the humans were the mystery of this place, but now it was clear. They had uncovered something much darker. The fleet approaching the colony was not just a remnant of a forgotten war. It was the force that had driven the humans into hiding. "We need to understand what we're up against," Frick said. "Lyra, get me access to any military data you can find on those ships." Lyra nodded, her face set with determination. As she worked quickly, her fingers flying over the console, she began to uncover more than she expected. "I'm pulling up a history file from the colony's main database," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "It's encrypted, but I think I can break through." "Just a second." The tension in the room was palpable as everyone watched Lyra's screen flicker to life. The file opened, revealing a series of records from the last days of the colony. The last entry was dated only a few hours before the colony's final shutdown. "It's a log," Lyra said, her eyes scanning the text rapidly. "It's from the colony's military commander. It's a warning." Fricks moved closer, his eyes narrowing, as he read the message aloud. "The invaders are here. The ships, an empire known only as the Consumed, have arrived. Their fleet is relentless. They are a race of pure destruction, bent on consuming entire civilizations for their own gain. They cannot be reasoned with. We have failed to stop them. There is only one option left: survival. We have initiated the stasis protocol and are placing the colony in a long slumber until the threat passes. We can only hope our people will survive. May they wake to a world that still exists." A cold silence followed. The crew stared at the screen, the weight of the words settling in. The Consumed. This was the enemy the humans had been running from, and it was clear now. Humanity had been fighting for its survival against a force unlike any other. Lyra spoke first. "The Consumed aren't just invaders. They're a scourge, wiping out entire civilizations without mercy. The humans, they knew they couldn't defeat them, so they chose to hide." Fricks's face darkened. "And we've just stumbled into the heart of that war. Those ships are not here to make peace." The rumbling from the planet's surface grew louder. It wasn't just the tremors of time. Something was happening beneath the colony, something far more dangerous. The ground seemed to shake with an unnatural force, like the very planet itself was trembling. "We need to leave now," Zor shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Those ships are about to land. If we don't get out of here, we'll be trapped." Fricks didn't hesitate. "Lyra, what's our fastest escape route?" Lyra checked the data on her console. "We're too close to the fleet's range. If we try to escape now, we'll be caught in their gravity pull. We'll have to make a run for it, but I can't guarantee we'll make it out without being targeted." Fricks made a quick decision. "Prepare the crew. We're going to have to fight back." With those words, the crew sprang into action. They quickly armed themselves with advanced weaponry, though the reality of their situation weighed heavily on them. No one had expected to find a deadly alien fleet waiting in the wings. The Zorak Empire might be advanced, but facing a force like the Consumed was a whole new challenge. As the crew made their final preparations, Fricks couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was just the beginning of something much larger. The colony, the humans, the mysterious fleet, all of it was tied together in a way they couldn't yet understand. And what they had uncovered was only a small piece of the puzzle. The war the humans had been running from was still out there, and it was far from over. The rumbling intensified. A loud crash echoed in the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against metal. The Consumed were landing. "We're out of time," Fricks said, his voice steady but urgent. "We fight for our lives now, or we die here, along with the secrets of this lost human colony." With one last glance at the darkened sky above, Thrix led his crew toward their ship, ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. The truth was out there, but so were the enemies, and it was time to find out what had been hiding in the shadows for so long. Humanity's hidden legacy. The Zorak ship blasted away from the surface of the abandoned human colony, engines roaring as they desperately gained speed. Outside, the dark shape of the consumed fleet loomed ever closer. The rumbling from below had intensified, signaling that the invasion had already begun in full force. The crew, though shaken, had a singular focus now: escape. But Commander Thrix knew that running wasn't enough. The consumed weren't the only mystery here, and the more they learned, the more questions piled up. As the ship hurtled into deep space, Lyra sat hunched over her console, her eyes scanning the data at a fevered pace. "Commander, the consumed ships are definitely locked onto our trajectory. They've activated their tracking systems, and we won't be able to outrun them for long." Thrix's jaw clenched. "We can't just run forever. We need to figure out what we're really up against." "What do you mean?" asked Zor, his face strained with urgency. "The consumed are a threat we've never faced before. They're the end for any race they encounter." "Exactly," Thrix replied. "They may be ruthless, but there's something more here, something we haven't fully uncovered yet. The humans, they weren't just hiding from them. They were preparing for something bigger, something more dangerous than even the consumed." Lyra turned from her screen, her eyes wide with realization. The map, the one that was displayed on the hologram back on the colony. It didn't just show one location. It showed multiple sites, scattered across the galaxy. Hidden human outposts. But there was something else. Coordinates that led to an unknown system. Thrix nodded. "That's right. These hidden colonies weren't just about survival. There was a plan in place, something the humans had been working on for centuries." Zor crossed his arms, his expression darkening. "You think they were preparing for the consumed all along?" "I don't think they were just preparing for them," Thrix said. "I think humanity's last hope wasn't just to hide. It was to fight back." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of humanity having developed a weapon or strategy capable of battling the consumed seemed impossible, but the data was there, scattered across the colony, buried beneath layers of history. "Lyra, pull up those coordinates," Thrix ordered. "I want to know where they lead. We need to find out what the humans left behind." The technician nodded, quickly accessing the encrypted files. Her fingers flew over the console as the screen shifted from one page to the next, decrypting the last set of coordinates. They were far out on the edge of the galaxy, beyond any known Zorak territories. It was a place untouched by war, a place where the map had stopped showing human settlements and instead pointed to a single location deep within a cluster of empty, barren stars. "There," Lyra said, her voice tinged with awe and apprehension. This is it. The coordinates match a location on the map. It's not just a colony, Commander. It's a stronghold." "A stronghold," Zor repeated, raising an eyebrow. "A hidden military base." Thrix's gaze hardened as he looked at the map. "Yes, but it's more than that. This is where humanity's final stand was planned. It's where they've hidden their last hope for survival." The room fell silent. If humanity had a weapon capable of turning the tide against the consumed, it was buried deep within that stronghold. But if the consumed were already hunting them, could they reach it in time? "Set course for the coordinates," Thrix commanded, determination in his voice. "We don't have much time. We need to find out what they left behind, whether it's a weapon or something even more dangerous." As the ship adjusted its trajectory, the crew braced themselves for the long journey ahead. The emptiness of space stretched out before them, a vast, unforgiving expanse filled with uncertainty. But the crew of the Zorak knew one thing. They weren't just racing against the consumed anymore. They were racing against time itself. Meanwhile, back at the human colony, the abandoned colony, now just a hollow shell, continued to shake under the pressure of the consumed invasion. The fleet loomed overhead, their weapons primed and ready. But in the depths of the colony, beneath the crumbled remnants of human civilization, a hidden mechanism began to stir. The technology buried there, forgotten by most, was powered up once more. A series of ancient doors creaked open in the dark, revealing an underground facility that had been untouched for centuries. It was a vast laboratory, filled with alien and human technology working in tandem. The room was illuminated only by the faint glow of dormant consoles, their screens flickering to life. A hidden AI, once thought to be a simple defense system, stirred from its slumber. It had been waiting, built to protect humanity's greatest secret, but now, with the consumed breaching the surface, it was time to awaken. "This is it," the AI's voice echoed, though it had no body. "The final stage is beginning. The defense system is active. Prepare to initiate Protocol X." Outside, the consumed fleet had begun its descent. Little did they know, the true legacy of humanity was about to reveal itself. And it wasn't a weapon. It was something far more powerful. Back on the Zorak ship, the crew had no idea that they were on the brink of stumbling upon humanity's final, most terrifying secret. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, and as they approached the coordinates, they began to realize that the truth about humanity's last stand was more complex and far more terrifying than they could have imagined. Thrix, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead, could feel the weight of their mission bearing down on him. Humanity's hidden legacy was not just a weapon. It was a new beginning, a chance to survive, or perhaps a final end to the war that had torn their galaxy apart. But one thing was certain, whatever they discovered next would change everything. A new beginning. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the Zorak ship, the stars seemingly indifferent to the tension within the ship's hull. Commander Thrix stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the holographic map ahead. The coordinates they were following had led them deep into uncharted space, beyond even the furthest reaches of the galaxy. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. They were close, closer than ever to uncovering the secrets that humanity had hidden away. The crew could feel it in the air. The journey had been long and filled with uncertainty, but now the truth was within their grasp. The stronghold was just ahead. "Commander," Lyra called from her station. "We're nearing the coordinates. There's a massive structure ahead, something entirely different from anything we've seen." Thrix's heart raced. They had entered an uncharted sector, and the scale of what lay ahead was unlike anything in the Zorak Empire's records. His mind raced with questions. What had humanity left behind? And why had they hidden it so far from everything else? The ship's sensors pinged, and the crew watched as the long-forgotten stronghold began to take shape before them. It wasn't just a base. It was a city, vast and sprawling, built with technology beyond even the Zorak's understanding. The architecture was not like anything they had ever seen. The buildings were sleek, geometric, and strangely organic, as if they had grown rather than been constructed. This isn't just a place," Zor said, awe in his voice. "This is a monument, a living monument." Thrix nodded, his eyes focused on the structure. It's humanity's last stand. But it's more than just a weapon. It's their legacy, a legacy built for survival. As the ship drew closer, the crew could see massive structures rising from the ground, large biodomes glowing faintly with life. There were no signs of life in the traditional sense, but the city itself hummed with activity, a strange, subtle energy that seemed to pulse through the air. "Should we land?" Lyra asked, turning to Thrix. "We don't know what's inside. This could be a trap." Thrix paused, his mind racing. "No, we need to land. If humanity has left something here, something that can turn the tide against the consumed, it's here. We need to find it." The ship slowly descended into the heart of the stronghold, landing in a large open area. The ground beneath them was solid, made from some kind of alien metal that shimmered with an otherworldly sheen. Thrix and his crew gathered their equipment, preparing for whatever awaited them. As they stepped off the ship and onto the surface of the stronghold, they felt an immediate difference. The air was charged with energy, not from any obvious source, but from the very ground beneath their feet. It was as though the stronghold itself was alive, breathing with an ancient force. "This place, it's not just a building," Zor whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "It's a sanctuary." They moved cautiously through the city, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The buildings around them were perfectly symmetrical, their surfaces glowing softly in the dim light. The crew passed strange statues and intricate carvings, depicting scenes of human life from before the war. They saw images of families, of children, of peaceful gatherings, but these images were marred by symbols of war and destruction. Thrix felt a strange sense of loss as he observed these carvings. These were the remnants of a civilization that had been lost to time, a civilization that had once thrived and now was nothing more than a memory, hidden away in this distant corner of the galaxy. But as they continued their journey deeper into the heart of the stronghold, the air grew heavier. There was a sense of urgency now. The walls seemed to pulse with a strange, unseen energy, and the deeper they went, the more the feeling of something watching them grew. Finally, they arrived at the central chamber. It was a massive hall, its walls covered in intricate symbols and patterns. In the center of the room stood a large cylindrical structure. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a machine of alien design. But with clear human markings, it was humming softly, its surface glowing faintly with light. "This is it," Thrix said, his voice a mix of reverence and awe. "This is humanity's legacy." Lyra moved closer to the machine, her fingers running along the surface. "It's some kind of generator, but not just any generator. This is a weapon designed to fight the consumed." Zor frowned. "A weapon? But if it's here, why didn't the humans use it before?" Thrix stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the machine. It wasn't ready. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a last resort, a final answer to the consumed. Humanity knew they couldn't fight them in the traditional sense, so they created something else, something that could wipe out entire fleets, something that could end the war. Lyra's eyes widened. "But if this thing is as powerful as it seems, why was it hidden away?" "Because humanity didn't want to use it unless they had no other choice," Thrix replied, his voice solemn. "They didn't want to destroy everything, just to survive." The machine hummed louder now, its energy intensifying. Thrix turned to the crew. "We need to activate it. We need to use it against the consumed." But just as he spoke, a low rumbling filled the chamber. The lights flickered, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. It was then that they heard it, the sound of ships, engines roaring, a massive fleet entering the atmosphere. The consumed had found them. "The consumed are here," Thrix said, his voice cold with resolve. "There's no turning back now." Lyra quickly tapped her console, trying to interface with the machine. "I'm trying to initiate the activation sequence, but the system is locked. We need a key, a command." Thrix's mind raced. The consumed were closing in. They had no time. "Find the key," Thrix ordered. "If humanity's legacy is here, we will use it to finish this war once and for all." As the rumbling grew louder, and the first of the consumed ships broke through the clouds, the crew realized that the fate of not only humanity, but the entire galaxy rested in their hands. With no choice but to fight, they had no idea if the weapon would work, but they would have to find out, before the consumed wiped them all out.